I used to believe that life had a rhythm, an order, a set of rules that, if followed, ensured success. Work hard, be loyal, love deeply. But the night everything unraveled, I learned that the rules were just illusions, and that the people closest to you could rewrite them at will. It was just past 10 when I finally closed my laptop. The law firm's office had long emptied, leaving only the sound of distant traffic filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I ran a hand over my face, exhaustion sinking into my bones. A text popped up on my phone, "Girls' night. Don't wait up." Samantha was never one for unnecessary words. After 7 years of marriage, I had learned to read between the lines. This wasn't a courtesy message, it was a wall, a gentle reminder that her world no longer revolved around mine. I tossed my phone into my briefcase and headed home. The drive was quiet, the city lights blurring as fatigue crept in. By the time I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. A subtle shift in the air. The porch light flickered, casting long shadows against the front door. And then I saw them, the red and blue flashes of police lights bouncing off the windows. 2 officers stood by the door, their faces unreadable. Samantha leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed, her lips curled in something between amusement and disdain. Beside her, her friends Kara, Olivia, and Jen whispered to each other, their laughter barely contained. "Ethan Carter." One of the officers stepped forward. "We have a warrant for your arrest." The words hit like a punch to the gut. What? There must be some mistake. Fraud. Identity theft. Laughter erupted from Samantha's group. Kara covered her mouth, barely suppressing her glee. "Oh my God, I can't believe he actually fell for it." I turned to Samantha, expecting what? An explanation? An apology? But she only smirked. "Relax, Ethan, it's a joke." A joke. The officers didn't seem amused. One of them gripped my wrist, cold metal snapping around it. "We still need to take you in. Standard procedure." My world tilted. "Samantha, tell them the truth." She shrugged. "It's not my fault you look guilty." The ride to the station was a blur. The officers didn't speak beyond the required formalities. I sat in the holding cell, staring at the peeling gray walls, replaying the moment over and over. The prank, the laughter, the look in her eyes detached, almost bored. The gravity of it all sank in when the officer returned, his expression softer than before. "Charges are dropped. Apparently your wife and her friends thought this would be funny." Funny. I could still hear their laughter, see their smug faces as they watched me be hauled away. I walked out of the station into the damp night air. My phone buzzed, a single message from Samantha. "Don't be so dramatic. Come home?" I stared at the screen, then deleted the message. Home. The word felt foreign now. By the time I reached our house, Samantha was waiting in the doorway, arms crossed. "Oh, come on, it was just a joke." "A joke? You humiliated me. You let them arrest me." She rolled her eyes. "Ethan, you're overreacting. You needed to loosen up. And look, you're fine." I studied her face, searching for something: remorse, guilt. There was nothing, just indifference. "You think I'm fine?" My voice was eerily calm. "You think I can just move on from this?" She sighed, exasperated. "What do you want, an apology? Fine, I'm sorry. There. Now can we be done with this?" Something inside me snapped into place. Clarity. "No, Samantha, we can't." I turned and walked past her, into the house that no longer felt like mine. Upstairs, I grabbed a suitcase, threw in clothes, my passport, anything essential. Samantha's voice trailed up the stairs. "What are you doing? You're being ridiculous." I zipped the suitcase shut. No, for the first time I'm seeing things clearly. She followed me as I walked back down, her tone shifting from annoyance to confusion. "Ethan, where the hell do you think you're going?" I met her gaze, my voice steady. "Away." She scoffed. "Away where? You have work, a life. You can't just disappear." "Watch me." And then I walked out the door, past the remnants of a life I no longer wanted, and into the unknown. The bus station smelled like stale coffee and rain. I sat on a bench near the back, the cold metal pressing against my palms. The city's neon glow flickered through the misted glass, but I wasn't watching. I was waiting. The ticket in my pocket was for a one-way trip, destination irrelevant. The duffel bag at my feet held what little I had taken from the house cash, a few clothes, my passport. Everything else, gone. 2 days ago, I had been Ethan Carter, corporate lawyer, husband, homeowner. Now, I was just a man about to disappear. I checked my phone one last time. No missed calls. No messages from Samantha. Good. I deleted the last of my accounts, banking, email, social media. I wasn't taking any chances. The private investigator I had contacted was efficient. For a price, he had erased my digital footprint, making sure no one, not even Samantha, could trace my steps. I had meant it when I told her I was done. The bus arrived with a sigh of air brakes, its headlights cutting through the drizzle. I exhaled, stood, and stepped onto the worn-out steps. As we pulled away, I didn't look back. Samantha didn't panic at first. At brunch with Kara and Olivia, she laughed it off. "Oh, he'll be back. He just needs to cool off." But days passed, and the laughter faded. The first real sign of trouble was the bank call. She had gone to withdraw cash for a shopping trip, only to be met with an error message. Insufficient funds. "That's impossible," she told the teller, voice sharp with entitlement. But it wasn't. I had emptied our accounts the moment I walked out that door. Everything had been in my name. The house. The investments. The savings. She hadn't noticed because she had never needed to. Panic set in when the bills started piling up. The mortgage. The car payments. The credit cards, once limitless, now declined. A week later, the house was put on foreclosure notice. Samantha tried calling me then. Dozens of times. Each went straight to voicemail. By the second week, Kara and Olivia had stopped returning her messages. Her carefully curated social life was unraveling. Without money, without the lavish gifts and expensive dinners, she wasn't as interesting anymore. When she tried to go back to work, she discovered that quitting her job had been a mistake. The market was unforgiving to women with gaps in their resumes, especially when those women had spent years treating their coworkers like inferiors. She was alone. And I was free. A new city. A new name. No more overpriced suits or 16-hour workdays. No more late-night arguments. No more pretending. I got a small apartment near the coast. Nothing fancy. Just a place where I could breathe. I took a job at a local bookstore, the kind of place where no one asked too many questions. The owner, an older man named Martin, took me in without much fuss. "You don't strike me as a bookseller," he had said on my first day. "I'm not," I admitted. He studied me for a long moment, then shrugged. "You'll learn." And I did. The days passed in quiet simplicity. Mornings were spent unpacking shipments, afternoons helping customers find their next escape. Evenings were mine. I had no ties. No obligations. No one to disappoint. For the first time in years, I wasn't living according to someone else's expectations. And yet some nights, as I lay in the unfamiliar bed, I felt the ghost of my old life pressing against my ribs. Not regret. No, never that. But a simmering anger. Samantha had humiliated me, stripped me of my dignity, laughed as I was dragged away in handcuffs. And she had gotten away with it. Until now. Because while I had disappeared, I hadn't forgotten. And neither had she. The divorce papers arrived at Samantha's last known address 3 months later. She had moved into a dingy apartment outside the city, the only place she could afford. When she saw my name on the envelope, she ripped it open, hands shaking. Finalized. Filed. Done. No negotiations. No settlements. She was officially nothing to me. Her hands clenched into fists. That's when she realized she had lost. I sat at a cafe overlooking the ocean, a cup of black coffee in my hands. The news alert came through on my burner phone. The house had been auctioned. The bank had seized everything. Samantha was broke. Friendless, struggling. I should have felt relief, satisfaction. Instead, I felt something else. Not pity. Just the quiet knowledge that this was only the beginning. Because I wasn't done yet. Samantha had always been good at pretending. Even as her world crumbled, she managed to put on a show, carefully curated social media posts, vague mentions of new beginnings, desperate attempts to claw her way back into the life she had lost. But I knew the truth. I had been watching. Her so-called friends, the same ones who had laughed as I was arrested, had turned their backs on her. They had their own problems, now problems I had made sure they couldn't escape. Mia, the high-powered executive, had built her career on secrets and deception. It took nothing more than a few well-placed emails to the right people: shareholders, journalists, regulators. One leaked document, one internal memo, and the scandal exploded overnight. Fraud. Insider trading. The media tore her apart. She tried to deny it at first, but denial meant nothing when the evidence was undeniable. The company distanced itself, throwing her under the bus. The board had no choice but to fire her. Jessica, the social media darling, had always lived for appearances. A perfect life, a devoted husband, brand deals pouring in. But perfect lives are fragile, especially when built on lies. I made sure a particular set of messages ones she had thought deleted found their way into her husband's inbox. Explicit, incriminating, undeniable. The fallout was immediate. A messy divorce. A PR nightmare. Her sponsors dropped her within days. The picture-perfect influencer reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. Then there was Olivia. Unlike the others, she had married well, secured herself a comfortable life. But comfort is delicate when based on deception. A few whispers in the right ears, a few old secrets resurfaced, and suddenly her husband was looking at her differently. The marriage crumbled under the weight of the revelations. One by one, they fell, and I never reached out to them. I never needed to. The pieces had been set in motion, and I let the inevitable happen. They had laughed that night, had found amusement in my humiliation. Now, they weren't laughing. A week later, each of them received an anonymous message. Talk your way out of this. I imagined the moment they read it, the sudden, sharp realization that their downfalls were not coincidence. That someone had been watching, waiting. That their destruction was not an accident. Samantha, of course, was not spared. She had spent months scrambling, trying to rebuild, trying to convince herself that everything would go back to the way it was. But she had no job, no friends, no way forward. So when an unexpected job offer came, she took it without hesitation. It was too perfect, really. A prestigious law firm, offering her a position far beneath what she once had but stable enough to be a lifeline. Desperation made her accept it without question. Her first day was predictable. She walked in with forced confidence, trying to regain some sense of control. She had no idea. I waited until the moment was just right, until she was settled, until she had allowed herself a sliver of hope. Then, I stepped into the conference room where she was waiting. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Ethan," she whispered. I took my seat across from her, the silence stretching between us. "Welcome to the firm." She swallowed hard. This is a joke." I leaned back, studying her. "No, Samantha, it's not." She glanced around, as if expecting someone to step in to tell her this was all some cruel trick. But no one did. This was real. I let the weight of the moment sink in before continuing. "You work for me now." Her mask cracked. "You set this up." I didn't deny it. "You needed a job. I needed an assistant. Seemed like a perfect fit." Her hands clenched into fists. "You can't do this." I leaned forward. "I already did." She tried to act unaffected, pretending that she could handle it, but I saw the cracks forming. She walked out of that meeting with her head high, but I knew this was just the beginning. The days that followed were a slow, methodical unraveling. Samantha was given the worst assignments, impossible deadlines, constant last-minute projects that kept her tethered to exhaustion. I made sure she felt it, the way I had felt it that night. At first, she tried to fight back. She stayed late, worked harder, convinced herself she could prove me wrong. But I wasn't interested in her success, only her breaking point. I made her read presentations minutes before deadlines. I scheduled meetings at ungodly hours, ensuring she was the first in the office and the last to leave. I had her running errands that had nothing to do with law, picking up dry cleaning, making coffee, transcribing documents by hand. She lasted 2 weeks before the first sign of real weakness showed. I caught her in the break room, gripping the edge of the counter, breathing heavily. The cracks were becoming fractures. Then came the inevitable. She stormed into my office one night, long after the others had gone home. Her face was pale, her hair disheveled, dark circles forming under her eyes. "This is personal," she hissed. I didn't even look up from my paperwork. "Is it?" She slammed her hands on my desk. "You're punishing me." I folded my hands, meeting her gaze. "What was it you said to me that night? That it was just a joke?" She faltered. "Did you think I'd forget, Samantha? Did you think you could humiliate me, laugh while I was dragged away, and just move on like nothing happened?" For the first time, I saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Not just exhaustion. Not just frustration. Fear. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She was realizing slowly that there was no way out. At that moment, I should have felt satisfaction. Victory. But there was something else, a dull ache in the back of my mind, something that wouldn't let me enjoy it fully. She had broken me first. But in the process of getting back at her, I had become something else. Someone else. She stood there, breathing heavily, waiting for me to say something, to give her an out. But I didn't. "Get out of my office, Samantha." She hesitated, then turned and left, the door clicking shut behind her. I stared at the empty space she had left behind, fingers drumming against the desk. For months, revenge had been my driving force. But now, with her standing on the edge of ruin, I found myself asking what came next. Samantha didn't show up to work the next morning. Or the next. By the third day, HR informed me she had resigned without notice. No explanation, no farewell email, just a simple, clinical exit from a life she had spent years building. I expected as much. The moment she had walked out of my office that night, I had seen it in her eyes. She had always relied on control, on power, on the belief that she was untouchable. But I had stripped her of those things, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. I should have felt triumphant. Months of meticulous planning had led to this, her downfall, her humiliation, her complete and utter loss. I had taken everything from her the way she had taken everything from me. And yet, as I sat at my desk, staring at the resignation email, there was nothing. No satisfaction, no closure. Just emptiness. For weeks, revenge had been my purpose, my reason to get up in the morning, my reason to keep going. Without it, I was left with the uncomfortable question I had been avoiding: what now? That evening, I left the office early, walking aimlessly through the city streets. The weight of everything pressed down on me in a way it hadn't before. I had always thought that once I had my revenge, I would feel lighter, unburdened. But instead, I felt like I was still carrying something heavy, something suffocating. I ended up at an old coffee shop, the kind that felt out of place in a city like this. Small, warm, quiet. I stepped inside, the scent of roasted beans and cinnamon filling the air. There were only a few other customers, mostly people who looked like they belonged here, students with laptops, an elderly man reading the newspaper, a barista humming softly as she wiped down the counter. I ordered a black coffee and took a seat by the window, watching the rain begin to fall outside. The city had never felt so distant. My mind drifted to Samantha, to the life she had built and lost, to the person she had become, and the person I had forced her to become. There had been a time when I had loved her. Not the version of her that had betrayed me, but the one from years ago, the one who had made me believe in something more than ambition, more than success. That version of her was long gone, just as the version of me who had once trusted so easily had disappeared. I didn't check in on her, but I didn't have to. The city was small enough that, eventually, I would know where she landed. And I did. 2 weeks later, I saw her. She was sitting on the steps of a rundown apartment building on the other side of town. Her clothes were wrinkled, her once perfectly styled hair unkempt. She looked lost. For a long moment, I just stood there, debating whether to turn away. But something in me, something I couldn't quite name, kept me there. She looked up and saw me. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "Come to gloat?" I shook my head. "No." She scoffed, wrapping her arms around herself. "Then what do you want?" I didn't know. Or maybe I did, but I wasn't ready to admit it. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. She frowned. "What is that?" "A plane ticket and a check." Her laugh was bitter. "Charity?" "Closure." She stared at the envelope like it might burn her fingers. "Why are you doing this?" I hesitated. Because I had won. Because there was nothing left to gain. Because, despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to watch her completely fall apart. Maybe all of those things, maybe none of them. "You don't deserve forgiveness," I said finally. "But I deserve peace." Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to argue, but then she stopped. For the first time, I saw something real in her eyes, not anger, not defiance, just exhaustion. She reached out, hesitated, then took the envelope. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "Start over, somewhere far from here." She let out a shaky breath. "And if I don't?" "That's up to you." For a long moment we just stood there. No yelling, no accusations. Just two people standing in the aftermath of a war they had both lost in different ways. She turned the envelope over in her hands, running her fingers over the edges. "I didn't expect this," she admitted. "Neither did I said. She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimpse of the woman I used to know, the woman who had once been my partner, my equal before everything had fallen apart. She shook her head, almost to herself. "I did love you once, you know." I nodded. "I know." Her eyes dropped to the check inside the envelope. "And what if this isn't enough to fix me?" I exhaled slowly. "That's not my problem anymore." She laughed softly, without humor. "No, I guess it isn't." I turned to leave. "Ethan," she called after me. I paused. "Thank you." I nodded once and kept walking. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I felt something shift inside me. Not redemption, not even relief. Just a quiet understanding that I had reached the end of this road. The next morning, I resigned from the law firm, packed my bags, left the city. For the first time in a long time, I didn't have a plan. No calculated steps, no next move. Just the open road and a life waiting to be rebuilt. Maybe I would find peace. Maybe I wouldn't. But at least I was free.